안녕 친구들. So this is actually my fourth video today. Fridays are typically my free days where I don't have to go to work. So I try to do a little bit of filming for the YouTube channel here. But first video was what? I'm a little bit frazzled now from so much talking because first video was actually for my other YouTube channel where I do a lot of things for my subscription services. Which most of you are probably not interested in. But the first real video for this channel was the Goo Family Book episodes 19 and 20. So that was one, and I think that was like what, almost 30 minutes long or maybe. Episode 8 for the Master's Son video recap was about, I think 40 minutes or so, right? And now this, I don't know how long this is going to be, so I'm hoping that episode 9 and 10, I'm going to smush them together. I'm going to probably just do a very quick highlights of each video and then do kind of a musings portion where I talk about what I thought of the episodes. And then that'll be it. So anyway, if you are a new subscriber, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for subscribing. I cannot believe you have subscribed after watching really long 40+ minute videos of just me talking, right? But for whatever reason why you're here, welcome and thanks for tuning in, and let's get started. Episode 9, pretty much the ghost is, the featured ghost for this episode is the ghost of a pianist's dead wife, and he is this world-class pianist, I think it's Rui Jang, or Louis Chang is basically how they say it in Korean, Louis Chang. And he apparently lives in France. He's this like great pianist and what have you. But his wife has died, and so since her death a few months ago, he has not been really able to perform. Well, as Jungwon is getting ready for his China business trip, the VP is in charge of this piano concert. It's supposed to be this big coup that he has been able to engage this world-class pianist to come to Kingdom and play an evening of piano or what have you, right? Anyhow, what happens is this, what I forgot to tell you is the way the episode starts. Remember how episode 8 ended with Jungwon clutching the desk because he was in a lot of pain, because he realized that Hiju wasn't ever planning on telling him, where the necklace is, who the other accomplice was, because there was someone she was trying to protect, right? And so Chungwon's just left reeling because he's thinking, she never really loved me. There's someone else that she's protecting even more so than me, and all of this stuff. Just a lot of emotional baggage that he's having to deal with at this moment, right? And so when episode 9 opens, he's seated in his big, huge chair and sofa, if you will. And Kongshit, I love this particular scene because for a man who had claimed at the beginning that he did not need comforting, Gongshi totally starts to comfort him. And then when he looks at her, she said, "What? You said I could start caring and, being concerned for you, right?" And then she really starts cursing Hiju out. And in that process of her cursing Hiju out, calling her Nakbanyon, and that the next time she sees her, she's going to scold her and all of this stuff, right? For causing Jungwon such pain and stuff. Jungwon is a little bit soothed by that. So anyway, they kind of, there's all this talk throughout the entire episode of what Kongshi is going to do when he leaves for China, and there's this whole scuffle with his like favorite ballpoint pen that he uses to sign, because while he's away, Kongshi wants something to kind of like reassure her of his presence, right? If she sees like a really bad ghost, like some sort of talisman, if you will, right? And so she gets permission from Secretary Kim to take Jungwon's favorite pen, right? And so throughout the episode, you see them kind of tussling over this pen, and he's like, "Give me the pen," and Jungwon, instead of the pen, because he found out that she had taken the pen from Secretary Kim, at Secretary Kim's suggestion, Jungwon buys this pendant, like a sun pendant, right? But when Secretary Kim had mentioned it on one of their little tours around the mall, Jungwon had said no, right? And then later on he backtracked, and when he was by himself, he purchased it for her, right? So there's all these cute moments with them, tussling about things like that, and you guys should watch it. Okay, I'm just gonna gloss over that part because um, this series is worth watching just to see those two characters interact with each other. I think a recent interview that I saw with So Ji-sop and Kong Hyo-jin, one of the interviewers asked So Ji-sop, people are saying that there is a clear reason why they should watch the show. Do you know what that reason is? And So Ji-sop has said the fun of watching both of us on screen, and it's so true. So I'm going to gloss over a lot of their interactions together because you really need to watch it. They're so incredibly adorable together. But anyway, the main story of this episode is that this pianist is very temperamental, and when his wife was alive, she handled every aspect of his preparation, especially right before his performance. And so she, from the clothes that he was going to wear to the food that he would eat and whatnot, she prepared everything. And so when she died of a sudden heart attack, he is just left bereft. Well, he tries to fake a hand damage, and part of it is because Kangwoo, who's now been told by Gongsil that she can see ghosts and all of this stuff. You remember Kangwoo doesn't like ghosts, right? So this whole episode for Kangwoo was just trying to learn how to conquer his fear so that he can start to talk to Gongsil again and maybe start to like her. Who knows, right? But anyway, while he's on one of his patrols, he ends up kind of getting into a little scuffle with the pianist, and the pianist pretends that Kangwoo has damaged his right hand. And so he then says, I can't play on in the concert, and he tries to cancel the performance. And so Gongsil, as a way of helping Kangwoo, so that he doesn't get fired or get into trouble or what have you, learns from the ghosts, the dead wife's ghost, that, the whole story. And then so she shows up at Jungwon's door with a bunch of supplies, ready to bake this cinnamon honey pie for her, for the pianist, right? As a way of trying to convince him that his wife is alive and all this stuff. And it's just hilarious because Jungwon thinks that she's there for the pendant, and there's all this misunderstanding and things like that. But anyway, watch it. Okay, that's all I can say. But anyway, one of the big things about that moment when she's cooking is that she ends up bumping into Jungwon, and she starts to get irritated at him, right? Saying, oh, you touched me and now you made her go poof. And Jungwon's look of like, are you kidding me? He literally says, you're getting mad at me? You're getting irritated with me? It wasn't long ago when you were like just clamoring to touch me, and now you're getting mad at me for bumping into you and all this stuff, right? But anyway, so it's definitely a reversal of roles that we're seeing with episode 9 and 10. And, I had mentioned in the video recap from episode 8 that I really felt like that was kind of the turning point where people had mourned the loss of, love or what have you. They were dealing with whatever emotional issues that they were having. And then 9 onward really is a building up of new relationships to a certain extent. And we see that with definitely Gongsil and Jungwon, because Jungwon starts to really let Gongsil into his life more and more, right? But anyway, going back to the whole cooking scene. So they finally bake this pie, and it has to be perfect, very intense cinnamon and all of this stuff, right? Well, while she's cooking though, we later find out that the ghost had noticed Gongsil looking at Jungwon as he was cracking nuts. And it's so cute. Episode 9 and 10, really, you get to see how cute Jungwon's character is, because Jungwon's cracking a walnut, and then he looks at the walnut, and he's like, walnut, you're in the lap of luxury. And he's like, do you understand how expensive this nutcracker is, right? It's just really cute. But anyway, so the ghost sees the way Gongsil looks at Jungwon, right? And so she then learns that Gongsil likes Jungwon, right? But anyway, one of the other things about that incident was because Gongsil gets really irritated with Jungwon for bumping into her and making the ghost go poof. Jungwon opens the door, takes out a bottle of champagne, slams it literally onto the counter, and he says, take a sip of this, get drunk, get possessed by her, so that the wife herself will then cook the pie, right? And then when Kung Shi says, oh, but that I heard that that was dangerous because if a ghost possesses me, they may not, they may not leave my body ever. And as soon as she says that, Chungwon, like without a single word, takes it and he puts it back, and then he tells her, never, you are never ever to drink any alcohol, right? So it's just this really cute scene where just all their little interactions together, you realize just how much Chungwon is really starting to care for her beyond the scope of the 10 billion won radar and such. But anyway, so they end up making the pie. They go, they call Louis, and then Louis finds out that Kung Shi can see his dead wife, and he's just beside himself. He's on his knees, asking her, please let me see my wife or talk with her. And he's just crying and, begging her, right? And Kung Shi just kind of pats him there, and it's hilarious because Chungwon is at his desk watching everything, and you see him try to go like this gesture to her to like get away from him, right? And Kung Shi's like, oh no, I can't. It's too pitiful. And so she continues to pat him and comfort him. Well, it turns out that Chungwon couldn't handle it, and so he literally got up and forced them apart, right? Because later on he says, and you need to be very careful about how you let people, like handle you and stuff. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, that man was like clinging to you, right? Had I not stepped in and, torn you apart from him, you would have continued to probably let him cling on to you all night long, right? And then at that point, Chungwon says, you should be more worried about yourself and not others. And she's like, why? What about me? And he's like, have you forgotten I'm going on a trip to China for an entire week? Aren't you worried about things that you will see without me, your hideout being, your safe haven being so close to you, right? And then at that point, Kung Shi said, well, these days, now that I have a little bit of breathing room, the ghosts don't crowd around me as much, and so I'm not as freaked out. So I'm able to handle things a little bit. And so Chungwon's like, really? He's like, then why would you take my favorite ballpoint pen? And then when he says that, Kung Shi is so cute. She goes, and she's like, I never thought Secretary Kim would like, squeal on me. Right? And then so when Chungwon's like, hand it over, give me the pen, right? So she's like searching through her huge bag looking for this pen, but not really wanting to find it, while Chungwon's like digging into his pocket to, exchange the pen for the necklace, right? As he takes it out, Kung Shi decides she doesn't want to give it to him, so she pretends that she can't find it, and she's like, just deduct it from my salary, and then she goes running off, right? And so Chungwon, literally, says to an empty office, he's like, fine, take the pen and get lost, right? Just, whatever, right? But anyway, what happens is, so the pianist agrees to play, and he apologizes to Kang-woo for trying to make trouble for him. And of course, Kang-woo finds out that it was Kung Shi who had asked, the pianist to apologize to Kang-woo and clear up the air and stuff. And then Louis then goes and asks Kung Shi to channel his wife to pick his outfit for the, performance, food, and all of the stuff, right? And the cinnamon tea and everything. And so as Kung Shi's doing that as a way of helping him out and ultimately kingdom, Chungwon is getting ready for his trip, right? Well, I'm going to very quickly fast forward through this, but basically Louis finds out that if he can get Kung Shi to sleep or drink or just kind of lose control of her conscience, that his wife's ghost can possess her body, right? So he puts a tranquilizer or a sedative that he used to take in order to try to sleep after his wife had died into a cinnamon tea that he then makes Kung Shi drink. And so when she falls asleep, he then waits for his wife's ghost to possess her, and at that point then you see a transformed Kung Shi wearing one of the outfits his wife used to wear, helping him get ready for his last, piano rehearsal and all this stuff, right? So the VP drops by to make sure, he and his wife drop by to make sure that the fingers of Louis the pianist are okay. And that's when they learn that Louis has, tells him that Kung Shi is his eternal muse, and that right after the concert he won't have time to say his goodbyes to them because he and Kung Shi are going to be taking a flight back to France immediately, right? And so the VP at that point calls Chungwon, who is at the airport. And the funny thing is, Chungwon had tried to, give her the necklace, but hadn't been able to, so he left it with a trash can ghost. And Kongshit had then run after him to say at least goodbye to him before he left off, and she missed him. And then when he was at the airport, he tried calling her, but by then Kongshit had been knocked unconscious by the sedative and all of this stuff, right? So Chungwon's about to go enter the boarding gate, and he gets this phone call from the VP, and thinking it's business, he answers. And then the VP's like, "Did you and Kongshit break up?" And Chungwon's like, "Are you calling me because of that?" He's like, "I'm about to board, okay? I'm about to go off to a trip, business trip in China for a week. You're going to call me about this?" And he's about to hang up. And then the VP says, "Did you know that Kongshit is, Miss Yang or Miss Tae is actually, Louis Zhang's, muse, right?" And then Chungwon's like, "What?" Because Chungwon, when he finds out that, Kongshit's with Louis, he just figures she's just helping him, right? But then when the VP tells him that Louis called her his muse, and that she was wearing this weird thing, and that she was acting like a different person, Chungwon's like, "Oh my gosh," right? He kind of realizes something's up. And then when the VP says, "Did you know even that they plan on leaving for France right after the concert?" That's when Chungwon like freaks out, drops everything, rushes back to the concert hall. And then we see him confronting the ghost. Okay, and the reason why the ghost actually possessed Kongshit's body, thankfully she only planned on using it temporarily, was that she wanted to say something to her husband, which was to get a life, wake up, stop being lazy, and start living your own life, because I'm no longer here to take care of you, right? So anyway, she waits in the waiting room listening to her husband, play or whatnot. And Chungwon comes in and he confronts her, right? And so he walks towards her to touch her so that she can go poop. But then she says, "But if I go, you won't be able to hear the secret. Don't you want to see how Kongshit sees you, right?" And Chungwon says no. And even though in episode 10, he tells Kongshit that he said no because he didn't want her secret exposed, he says no at that point because he doesn't want to know. And so the ghost very wisely says, "Or is it because you don't want to know the answer, because the answer won't add up to your calculations, it won't fit into your calculations, right?" And then she says, "Why are you keeping her around? Because she's no longer useful, right? And obviously the figures aren't adding up as to why you should keep her around." And then she's like, "I'm curious. I think I'll stay in her body a little longer so I can see why you're keeping her around and what your secret is," right? And at that point, Chungwon says, "Look, watch, and then get lost." And then he walks up to her, takes Kongshit's face, and then kisses her, right? And then the ghost goes poof. And then Kongshit, because the ghost has gone, sags against Chungwon. And you see Chungwon really just mentally, emotionally reeling from the kiss and what's just happened, right? So the next thing we see is he has laid Kongshit on the sofa so she can continue sleeping, but he's holding onto her hand so that no ghosts can come to her and things like that, which, it's such a great gesture because it shows a tenderness on his part, but at the same time, it's also a protective measure to ensure that she's safe from ghosts. But anyway, so he allows her to sleep comfortably, but when he hears Kangwoo approaching, he then takes off so that he can go back to the airport. And once he's there at the airport, he, I guess, apprises Secretary Kim of what's happened, and Secretary Kim says, "So is Miss Tae okay?" And instead of answering that question, Chungwon tells him, "I am not okay. I am not all right." And then he says, "I know you've been trying to keep her close to me. Why?" And the secretary tells him, "With her next to you, you were changing. And it was a good change to see." And Chungwon then, kind of adds to that. "And as long as she's next to me, I will continue to change, won't I?" And he's like, "I don't want to change." And then that's kind of where they leave off in episode 9. So when it says a week passes by, and then just as Chungwon's about to come back into Kingdom from his business trip to China, Kong Shi finds the necklace pendant from the trash can ghost, right? And so she's all excited because she barely made it through the week with his pen as a talisman, but then to realize that he had gotten her a necklace, she's so excited. Of course, she doesn't remember the kiss, so she goes running to greet him, and then that's when she learns the bombshell that he has returned engaged and that his fiancée is with him. And so episode 9 ends very climactically with her just staring as Chungwon and his fiancée walk up to them, and Chungwon barely acknowledges her presence. So episode 10 picks up from there, and what's really cool is that you see more and more of Chungwon not being able to ignore Kongshi, and there are some very significant conversations that they have where Chungwon's trying to get her to confess and own up to the secret that she does like him, and then Kongshi says, "Oh no, you got the secret wrong. You're misunderstanding things. I like sweet things, so you know who I like." And so she keeps insisting that her secret involves Kangwoo, whereas Chungwon keeps insisting that it doesn't and it involves him, right? And there's this great little metaphor that during one of their altercations or conversations, she tells Chungwon about a cartoon that she saw where a wolf couldn't eat a goat because he had fallen in love with the goat, and the goat had likewise as well, right? But she tells Chungwon, "I can't be foolish like that wolf. I'm not going to do that," right? And so Chungwon's like, "Okay, so let me get this straight. You, the wolf, only plan on seeing me, the goat, as a food source for survival." And so Kongshi says, "Yes, so you shouldn't keep asking me if the goat likes the wolf," right? And so Chungwon's like, okay, fine. Let's say that's the case with the wolf. What about the goat, right? And then Kongshi, they're so cute together. Kongshi says, "Well, the goat likes the wolf too." And so Chungwon's like, "Okay, and?" And then Kongshi says, "Well, the goat doesn't want the wolf to die." So the goat says to the wolf, "Wolf, you can eat me." And then at that point, Chungwon looks at her like horrified, and he's like, "That goat is crazy," and then he walks out and stuff. Anyway, the ghost for episode 10 is about a ghost that lives inside this kind of very priceless porcelain, vase or vase, and Chungwon's aunt gets bewitched by that, and so literally she's kind of living in her own dream world, and her husband, anything and everything her husband does, she finds vulgar and such, right? So even though Chungwon is now engaged, and we find out later that it's totally a business contract and such, that he's going to dissolve the marriage, the wedding plans in like a week, right? And that's all that his fiancée needs for her to assume control of a good portion of her father's company, and in exchange for allowing her the safety of re-entry into Korea as, a newly engaged, woman preparing for her marriage, she is going to lend her business support to Chungwon when he enters Shanghai to start his business in China, right? So that's kind of the business arrangement, but everyone else thinks that it's a real marriage, right? So Kongshi is just freaked out, and then Kangwoo is seeing this as a way of kind of separating Kongshi from Chungwon, and I guess trying to get Kongshi to like him, right? So he even gives her like a Kongshi doll. Remember the one that he had thrown away? I think he must not have taken it from the little boys. That would just be too heartless. I think what he must have done is purchased another set, and he keeps one on his desk, and then the pink one, Kongshi, he gives to Kongshi, right? But anyway, there's a lot of cute moments. But the big thing is that anytime Kongshi and Chungwon talk, Kongshi just keeps giving him answers that just defy his expectations. So I think in the middle of the episode, Chungwon realizes that he's getting sucked into Kongshi's world, that he's realizing his unique role, and that as long as he sees her in this kind of capacity, he's not going to be able to heartlessly cut ties with her, right? So he tries to get her to agree to be like a candy to him, so that then he won't mind kicking her out of his life, right? And so when he says something like, hey, why don't you be Candy? I'll set you up with a house, car, and all this stuff. Kungsha starts saying things like, well, a big house I don't need because then there's too many places for ghosts to hide. A car, although I have a driver's license, I don't need a car because I'm afraid because ghosts might pop up and stuff. And she's like, and in terms of studying, I have thought about going back to school and finishing my degree because there's a little bit of time still that she has left where she can go back to a prestigious college and finish her degree. She's like, if I'm in this current state right now, I think I can still take a test even though there's a ghost seated right next to me, right? And so she's like, it's okay. And then when Chungwon says that he wants her to be Candy so that he can easily dismiss her at the end, she refuses, right? And it's just so cute because early on in the episode, when as a way to ensure her place as, so that she could still have him as her safe haven, she had gone to congratulate him and all of this stuff. She had said, just can you leave me the metaphorical like second basement or second floor basement so that I can go in once in a while and kind of like very discreetly, go into the hideout and come out and stuff, right? And when Chungwon had given her this look, she had said, or you can have a son and then you won't have to bother with me and I can just take care of the son and and Chungwon's just shocked because she's just overdoing it, right? He's like, wow, you come in here out of the blue and now you've just gone so far that you've given me a son in this scenario of yours, right? So their interactions are just really cute. And this video recap is all over the place, right? But long story short, the ghost gets dispelled, and the way that the ghost gets dispelled is that Kongshi's advice had been to the VP and his wife that if there's bewitching that happens, the vase needs to be broken, right? Well, the VP is getting increasingly concerned and he keeps thinking about that. So he takes the vase or the vase to Chungwon late at night and he tells Chungwon that that was Kongshi's advice, right? So the next thing you see, and this is where you really get to see the playfulness of Chungwon starting to come out, he asks Kongshi, he's like, did you tell my, the VP that the solution to this is to break the vase? And Kongshi's like, oh, is your aunt in a really bad way? And Chungwon's like, she's really bad. She won't get out of bed. She's dying, right? Totally being exaggerating. And then Kongshi's like, oh, then yeah, we should break it. And then Chungwon says, be very careful what you say because if we break this, my marriage could break too. My wedding can, like get broken. My engagement, right? And then so Kongshi's like, oh no, then we can't do that. And then so Chungwon really lays it on thick and he's like, but my only aunt is dying in bed and all this stuff. And then she's like, but then I guess we have to break it, huh? And then at that point, like Chungwon's face changes and he's like, all right, decision made. You say we break it. All right, I'm going to break it and then you take responsibility for anything that happens. If my marriage breaks down, my wedding doesn't happen, then it's your responsibility. And then she's like, why? Well, why is it my responsibility? And before she can even stop him, and she's saying, no, 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 no. He drops it and it shatters and he looks at her and he's like, it's your responsibility now. Well, later on in the episode, and there are these moments where you can clearly see Chungwon in angst because he's not quite sure whether Kongshi, likes him or whether it's Kangwoo that she likes and all this stuff, right? And he finds himself unconsciously getting closer or wanting to be near Kongshi, right? So there's just this really very telling moment where he tells his aunt and VP that he's keeping Kongshi next to him. And the reason why he announced the marriage was so that he could keep Kongshi safely next to him without causing any, whatever, right? But already rumors are flying that people are thinking Kongshi has been dumped by him and all of this stuff. But anyway, so the end of this episode, though, is very climactic. And those of you who are fangirls, you're going to be freaking out as you watch this if you haven't already. But Chungwon meets his soon-to-be ex-fiancé in the same restaurant that Kongshi is meeting her high school buddies for the first time in a really long time. And we find out, of course, that Secretary Kim has arranged it so that they're in the same, restaurant. And the great thing about this episode is you see the VP rooting for Kongshi as well, so it's really cute. But anyway, after business is done, Chungwon comes down and he happens to see Kongshi there, right? And so he says to the secretary, oh, Kongshi is there. And the secretary's like, oh, this must be where she's meeting her, high school buddies. And of course, Chungwon gives him this knowing look, right? And then the secretary continues. He's like, I heard your father landed, and he did land. And we find out one of the things, episode 10, we find out is that Hiju may have a twin sister who is actually involved in the kidnapping. And the person that Hiju is protecting is probably this person that Chungwon has misunderstood to be someone else. But anyway, Secretary Kim says, your father just landed, and Kangwoo Timjang is Kangwoo's gonna be coming. Do you want to stick around so you can talk to Kangwoo, right? And then Chungwon says, there's no need to call Kangwoo here. I'll talk directly to my father, right? And then Secretary Kim's like, oh, I'm not calling him, for that reason. Kangwoo's actually coming. And then Chungwon looks at him a little bit funny, and he's like, yeah, apparently he's here. He's going to be coming so that he can hang out with Tae Gongsil and her friends. And the secretary says Gongsil must be really happy because, this great looking, she's going to have this great looking boyfriend come and make her proud and, make her shine, in front of her friends. And Chungwon is not pleased, of course, right? Well, when we go to the table, we find out that the friends are very curious about the rumors, whether Gongsil is really the girlfriend of Chungwon and all this stuff. And of course, Lee-Dong's there saying, why don't you tell him what you told me about how you pursued him and then how you got dumped and stuff, right? So Gongsil decides, sure, because she told them about the accident and stuff. So then she tells them the whole story of how she met Chungwon, and she kind of spins it so that it sounds like she pursued him and that he finally accepted her, right? Leaving all of the talk of ghosts and radars and, safe havens out. And then Lee-Dong says, because after she had talked about how Chungwon had even planned a swimming pool event, she asks her friend, so, what do you guys think of the situation and of me? And everyone's like, oh, we're so envious, you're so lucky, and things like that, right? Lee-Dong had then said, well, get to the ending because that's the most important part, right? And so Gongsil says he's going to be marrying a Chebo's daughter soon. And at that point, all of her friends are like, oh, and, one friend's like, oh, no wonder, or, oh, such an obvious thing, right? And Gongsil says, though, as they're kind of, saying, oh, looking sad and sorry for her, she says, despite that, though, I'm going to stay by his side. I'm going to stick to him, right? And then the friends are like, that's not right. She's, she continues to say, even though I may look shameless and pathetic to people, she's like, I can't help it. In my world, he's a special person that I need, right? That I can't live without. And, she makes it sound like it's a romantic thing, but we also know that there's that double entendre, deeper meaning, right? And so as she's sad, and all of her friends are sad to realize that Gongsil is in such need of Chungwon shows up behind her, and then everyone looks up, and it's just this awesome moment. Total, classic K-drama moment, and then Chungwon, strokes her hair, and then she looks up, and then I love how Chungwon says, that person is me, right? And then he looks at Gongsil and he says, Tae Gongsil, because of you, I just broke off my engagement, right? You take full responsibility for this. And he's like, let's go, right? And as he tries to pull her away, she's like, what are you doing? What are you doing right now, right? And then he looks at her and he's like, so you finally give me the expected reaction of a normal person, because he had been trying to get her to react normally, right? All throughout episode 10. And then he's like, so you're upset. Is it my turn to then act cute? So then he literally turns her, and then hugs her. And he's like, my baby is, appears to be upset. Let me ease the situation, or let me try to make up with her by treating you all to dinner, right? Have a great time here while I take my baby, out. And then he's like, baby, you want to come with Oppa? And then he takes her out, right? At that point, she goes outside. She tears her, she pulls her hand away. And then she confronts him saying, I get it. Because he was upset, saying, if you leave talks of ghosts and radars and all of that out, people are going to assume you're, Candy. They're going to understand our relationship in an easy way. And I appreciated the fact that even though Chungwon had been trying to get her to agree to be his Candy so that he could easily dismiss her, when people actually see it that way in front of him, and he sees how she is the recipient of that, it upsets him, and he doesn't like that at all, right? So I was like, yay, Chungwon. But anyway, so Chungwon makes that point, and then Kongshi's like, okay, I get it, but that's who I am in your world. And then she walks away, and as she walks away, she runs into Kangwoo, who is, you know, who was just on his way in to act as her boyfriend, and he's like, are you okay? What's wrong? What are you crying? She's like, she can't talk, and she's like, it's okay, kind of thing. And then Chungwon sees that, he walks up, and he's like, I was in the process of taking her with me, and then he takes her on. And then Kangwoo like tries to follow, but then Iryong had come out, and she's like, Kangwoo, what are you doing here? And then Kangwoo's like, what just happened? Why is, Kongshi like crying, and what is, the boss doing here and everything like that? And then Iryong fills him in that the boss came, told her that the engagement had been broken and that Taekwondo needed to take responsibility for it, right? Well, the thing that I didn't mention is that Kangwoo, because he works directly for Jungwon's dad, had learned from Secretary Kim earlier on in the episode that the marriage was a sham and that it was just really for business purposes and the marriage was going to end in 1 week's time, right? So Kangwoo knows that Jungwon is playing some sort of game, right? And so he leaves after telling Iryong, I really do like Kongshik. Now that you know the extent, you can't ask me to be your boyfriend again, can you, right? And so he walks away. And then the episode ends really with Kongshik and Jungwon kind of talking things over. And Kongshik's like, are you so afraid of, what I may expect or the burden that I may place on you and on your world that you would break off your engagement and then like tell me that it's my fault, right? And then Jungwon says, are you sure that you can treat me objectively, protect me, and then when I ask you to leave, leave, right? And then you can just see me solely as a safe haven or a hideout, in emergency cases and such, right? And she's like, I told you I can't, even though you treat me this badly. If I see a really scary thing, I will come running to you. You know this. And he's like, fine. Everything from here on out is all you. You handle everything. I'm not going to, think about how it affects you. And she's like, thank you. I can't handle everything, right? And then he ends on this. He's like, fine. Then handle this first. And then he says, I think I love you. What are you going to do with that? And then that's how it ends. Sorry, my sister's over there. She's about to laugh. Anyway, so that is the end of episode 10. I am sure that last declaration, I mean, that is on par with, what was it, episode 4 when he twirls around and he says, hide. Your, emergency shelter is here, or your air raid shelter is here, right? So, anyway, we have a few days before episode 11 airs to see what Kongshi's reaction is and how the rest of the story is going to proceed from there. But I hope this recap was worth watching or listening and that it made sense. I apologize for the convolutedness of the recap. I felt like I was everywhere and anywhere, but hopefully this was fun for you to listen to. And I will see you next week. And I think there was a lot more I wanted to say, but we're already at 37 minutes, 38 minutes, so I'm going to close it here. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I will see you hopefully next week again. And I will try to upload this before the weekend is out. So take care. Bye.